elite of the Israeli military, the pilots of the IAF.
They were fighting in situations where civilians were all around. There was nothing antiseptic about this. Sometimes a war can be very mechanical these days with modern weapons. Even pilots who run the most sophisticated machines would sometimes drop their bombs in the sea instead of on their targets because they didn't believe either they couldn't find their targets or they questioned whether their targets really had military value. Had, in effect, civil disobedience in the military, and that's quite something.
Never before had pilots questioned the morality of their cause. In the Air Force, strict discipline and rigid professionalism are a way of life. But outside of Beirut, events unfold that give the men of the IAF and the entire nation of Israel reason for doubt. In two refugee camps near Beirut, called Sabra and Shatila, over 2,500 Palestinians, mostly old men, women, and children, are massacred by Christian Phalangist militia. They are let in by the Israeli soldiers surrounding the camps, soldiers who are well aware of the Phalangists' hatred and intent.
And how did you let these people come in here?
If you are traveling here in Beirut, you know that it is a very complicated task, and there is no way that you can block all the roads and all the narrow passes that are here.
Despite early protests of ignorance, it soon becomes clear that the Israelis stood by for hours and turned deaf ears to the shooting and cries of the victims. In the Knesset, the seams of Israeli society begin to burst. As word of the massacres spreads, joy inspired by the Air Force victory over the Syrians gives way to outrage. 2 months after the invasion, the PLO evacuates Beirut. World opinion never again looks at Israel in the same light. Even to their allies, the Israelis have gone from oppressed to oppressor. Despite having destroyed an enemy air force in just days, many view the debacle in Lebanon as anything but victory.
The question who won the war in Lebanon, it's really a difficult question because sometimes the winners lost as well. We won only on the tactical operational level, not strategically.
The pain and introspection brought about by the events of 1982 linger. Here, outside of Jerusalem, lie the remains of over 1,100 airmen lost in battle since 1948. It is often said that the defeat of the Israeli Air Force would bring the death of the nation. If so, the deaths of these men have brought the nation life. But the challenges they faced and solutions they found between 1973 and 1982 would have repercussions far beyond the state of Israel.
Our day starts very early. We never
15,000 Soviet-built SAM missiles. The tactics they devise stem primarily from the Israeli experiences of 1973 and 1982.
After 1982, we were asked by the American military forces and mainly the American Air Force to come and brief the officers of the U.S. Air Force about the way the war in the Bekaa Valley went, what worked and what didn't work, what are the lessons that we learned from that war.
The Bekaa Valley campaign was something that a lot of us had studied pretty carefully, and in fact that we were able to draw some lessons and some ideas directly out of the Bekaa operations and apply them to the Gulf War situation. it became quite clear that one of the major reasons for the very significant Israeli successes was that the Israelis had managed to destroy the ability of the Syrians to command their forces and to control them.
Technological advances in the F-15 and other aircraft enabled the Americans to not only borrow from the Israeli experience, but to expand on it. 145 Eagles will see action in the Gulf. They will take into battle the same countermeasures used by the Israelis against the Syrian missile threat, chaff and flares. And as the Israelis had over the Bekaa Valley, the Americans will employ a fleet of drones in attacking Iraqi defenses around Baghdad. This time, however, the drones will follow an initial wave of stealth aircraft meant to destroy key Iraqi air defense nodes without being detected.
After the initial F-117 strikes went through, of course, all the Iraqi gunners reported for work because the bombs were going off. And so now they got on their radars and turned on their SAM radars and their gun radars, and they were all searching. The next thing that came through was Puba's party. It was a bunch of targets, not aircraft, that looked like targets that looked like aircraft. They immediately shot every one of them down and dutifully reported so. But in the process, they absorbed almost 100 anti-radiation missiles going into their radars. We put fear into the heart of the Iraqi air defenders that moment, and it never left them the rest of the war.
Just as important as stealth and drones, the decade following the Bekaa engagement saw terrific advances made in PGMs, or precision-guided munitions. By 1991, PGMs reach a level of sophistication that enables them to paralyze Saddam Hussein's air defenses on the very first night of war.
In World War II, had we wanted to have a 90% probability of putting a single bomb in, say, in this room, which is, let's say it's about a 60 by 100 foot room, and had we been using B-17s with the same accuracy that they had in the campaign against Germany, we would have had to have dropped 9,000 bombs, which would have meant putting 10,000 men at risk. So what that meant in World War II, if we were using that kind of technology, is that we do not try to put a bomb in this room. Conversely, in the Gulf War, I can send one 117 that will drop one of its two bombs with one man at risk and have a 90% probability that the bomb will not only fall in this room, but probably will fall between the two of us, if in fact that's what we want to do.
Delivering PGMs is a task not limited to the stealth fighter. Just 1 week into the war, another F-15 arrives on the scene. It is the F-15E Strike Eagle. Unlike the dogfighting C model, this two-seater specializes in air-to-ground attack. By January 22nd, Lantern targeting pods arrive in the Gulf that enable the 48E models in Desert Storm to deliver laser-guided munitions. The weapons information officer pinpoints the target with a laser beam. Once the 2,000-pound PGM is released, it rides the beam onto target, even after the pilot has turned to leave the area. With their missile umbrella destroyed, the Iraqis react just as their Syrian and Egyptian counterparts had. Rather than grant coalition forces control of the air, they send interceptors out to do battle. These fare no better than their predecessors over the Sinai and the Bekaa Valley. When Iraqi pilots attempt to oppose American F-15s, they die with alarming regularity. The Eagle's APG-63 radar enables pilots to tell whether incoming MiGs carried drop tanks or weapons from nearly 30 miles away. In just days, dogfighting specialist F-15C